So I was working with brands like GSK, which is a global pharma company, with Medium, they're kind of like a blogging
hmm
platform, and then most recently with Wix, which is a website creation platform. We definitely realized early on that founder-led branding, founder-led sales, founder-led everything basically, it just performs better right off the bat.
That was one of my key questions, was this phrase, and I want to just double click on that, is good ideas can change the world. They just need to be heard.
So if we help founders tell their story, why they started, what their vision and mission is, who they're looking to help, then we find that the pieces kind of fall in place and it makes for more natural and organic storytelling and creation.
It's like, yes, I'm selling, but it's because I've inspired you into this other vision, that this grander thing that we're trying to accomplish. Like, come join us on this journey.
AI is essentially changing the conversation to not just being creative, but curated.
What is the day-to-day of Ido, the founder of Magic Media, or what are you hoping to achieve? Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Couplepreneur podcast. My name is Adam, one half of the Couplepreneur, and today I'm excited to sit down with my good buddy, the one, the only, Ido Lechner. Ido is the founder of Magic Media, a sales and marketing agency that helps thought leaders capture mindshare and grow their business. Ido, how you doing, man?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me on today.
Yeah, absolutely. This is something I've been wanting to do for a while because honestly, we had met on LinkedIn, got connected in the DMs as every good LinkedIn relationship should start. And I just was blown away kind of by your content, by the intentionality behind your writing and your eye for design. And so I've always had this in the back of my mind of like, man, I want to have a deeper conversation with Ido. And so I'm just excited to be able to sit down and have this thing today. So appreciate it.
Hey, likewise. I really appreciate the compliments.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so to give everyone and our listeners a bit of a roadmap or a plan such that it is, what we're going to try and talk about today, if we can get all the way through it, is I would love to talk about Magic Media, your business,
Sure.
kind of how you think about it. I think you have a really interesting vision for the company, and I would love to kind of dive into that a little bit more. What it's like to hire and build a team for the first time, and some creative ways that you've aligned incentives. I think that would be really actionable. And I'm excited to, like I said, learn a little bit more about that. We'll touch on some LinkedIn growth strategies and then give you some space to talk about the future of Magic Media and maybe some advice for business owners that think LinkedIn might be a good place to invest their time, resources, and growth. Cool?
Rock on. Yeah,
Very
let's dive
cool.
right in.
All right. Well, to give you a little bit of space, I just want to start by asking, maybe if you could put some context to like Magic Media, what it is that you do, why do you do it, and maybe even right before that is like tell us a little bit more about you, Ido, and kind of your journey to this point.
Sure. So I can start with myself. I've been a writer now for over a decade, and that's really where I started in writing. And then also from a education standpoint, and I started doing digital media quite early on. So I have those two aspects of my life and my career. I realized early on in that I always love to make stuff, right? I always like to create. And so that was a huge motivator for me, a driving force for why I do what I do. And later on in my career, I realized that, that's one aspect of content marketing, of just doing business in general, is the creative layer of it. But I realized that I wanted to take it a step further and get to the strategic sort of stratosphere of things as well. So it's not just what are you making, but why are you making it, right? So I got my early sort of roots in writing, but then I became an editor where I was able to take it a step further from a strategic standpoint, like why are we making what we're making and who is it for? And then a step further from that, which was content strategy. So writing, editing, content strategy. And with each jump, I got a little bit more strategic with not just the what, but the how and the why and the who. So the five W's, right? And that's really where I got my start. So I was working with brands like GSK, which is a global pharma company. I was working with PSFK, which is more of a media space company, with Medium, if you're familiar with them. They're kind of like a blogging
hmm
platform. And then most recently with Wix, which is a website creation platform. So my career has taken me in a lot of different directions, but the sort of the thread between it all is staying creative and strategic through all of it.
And so does Magic Media focus on like working with brands, working with kind of like thought leaders individually? I know you had mentioned, working with individuals and kind of presenting their thought leadership and kind of collecting mind share and really trying to have that greater impact and presence. And so I was curious,
Mhm.
how you think about the two different, I don't know, pillars, if you will, like the individual and then the brand itself.
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. So we definitely realized early on that founder-led branding, founder-led sales, founder-led everything basically just performs better right off the bat than working for, like working to create content strategies for a company per se. And that's really just because inherently people would rather do business with other people rather than a logo. And so that's not to say that we don't create for brands as well, but we definitely like to start with more of a founder-led approach to begin with. And so if we help founders tell their story, why they started, what their vision and mission is, who they're looking to help, then we find that the pieces kind of fall in place and it makes for more natural and organic storytelling and creation for the brand as well. And so we start with founder led, but we also create for brands as well. And Magic Media's overarching vision or mission, if you will, is good ideas can change the world. They first have to get heard first. And so that's really, the reason behind why we do everything. We like to work with startup founders who we call visionaries. And so they're working at something more than just making money, right? It's not just about securing the bag, but it's about actually going out there and changing the world. And so we work with people who are either thought leaders already or aspiring thought leaders. They're experts in their space, they're authorities, and we just help them get their message out there.
So I'm so glad you brought that up. That was one of my key questions was this phrase. And I want to just double click on that is good ideas can change the world. They just need to be heard. I think there's like a depth to that. I know I get goosebumps when I think about that. The opportunity to people have these stories, these insights, these visions for the grand world that we want to create, but it matters that we kind of have to like be able to cut through the noise. And the way to do that is
Right.
by getting really clear, like you said, the strategy behind it, not just what we're
Hmm.
creating or what we're saying, but like why and how do we actually get that and who are we trying to talk to? Uh, that's
That's
amazing.
right. And if I
Mhm.
can add on real quick, something that I've realized kind of early on in more of the design space that I was in. So, I had a bachelor's in digital media and then a master's in design strategy. And what I realized in just kind of learning in the design field is that when you just like take a moment to take stock of what's around you, everything around us has been designed by someone for someone, right? Whether that's something as simple as a wall or a table or a chair or a whole business or a mode of transportation or the education system or government, everything around us has been designed for someone by someone, right? And so, what if we took part in that? What if we helped create a better world? So that's the vision.
That's that intentionality piece, like the intention behind
Yeah,
it. That's cool. That's
that's
so
right.
cool. So, in we were kind of exchanging some notes back and forth before this call, and you had talked a little bit about this Venn diagram that you had created, and I'll try and like throw it up on the screen here. But this idea behind like that thought leadership, social selling, and content marketing, and you had broken them out into different pieces, but then you also
Mm,
showed how as a Venn diagram they overlap to that point, like that true essence of what you're trying to do. And I'm thinking in terms of like sales and marketing and kind of balancing between those two things in order to actually get clients, do business, those sorts of things. Would you want to dive
totally.
into that a little bit?
I would love to, yeah. And great question, by the way. So essentially what I've realized early on, especially working with founders and with businesses that are kind of newer to the content marketing game, is that first you have to build up goodwill before anyone is actually ready to buy, right? You have to show people that you're an authority, an expert in your space, that you have good intentions, right? It's a trust factor as well. It's not just are you an expert or not, but are you a good person? Like, do people want to work with you, right? So you have to show those two things, the humanity side and the expertise side. And so what we've realized early on is that a lot of the time for folks who are new to the game, content isn't what gets the sale, right? You still have to sell. And so what content does is it actually optimizes for the sale, right? Most of the time people will see content and they won't go and inherently buy right off the bat. But what they do is they keep that sort of insight that you provided for them, and they run with it. They implement it in their business, or they talk about it in dialogue, and they'll never forget who taught them what it is that they learned. And so when you're trying to sell, right, people will go online and they'll be talking to you. They'll be like, who is this Adam guy that's so interested in me, right? So they'll go on your LinkedIn, they'll look at your content, and that's when they're like, okay, this guy knows what he's talking about. And that warms them up, sort of nurtures them to become prospects and a client, from lead to prospect to client. And so that's why we've kind of married social selling with content ecosystems or content creation, if you will. It's because we realize that content marketing is just one half of the story. So yeah, good ideas can change the world. They just have to get heard first. But in that, there's a sort of transactional element, right? People want to buy, or
Mhm.
people maybe not people want to get sold to, but um, people want to participate in that changing the world. And so you just have to convince them of that. So there's a social selling side, there's a content side. We don't pretend to be experts in anyone's space, right? Like we work with all sorts of people. We work with like folks in change management, folks in like supply chains, sustainability supply chains, people who create like data-driven color marketing, for instance. So we work with a ton of different people in different spaces. So we can't possibly be experts in the spaces that all those people occupy. So that's why in the triple Venn diagram for the thought leadership circle, that's the client or the prospect bringing that sort of thought leadership to us. And what we help them with is the content ecosystem and the social selling. So we help them push their message out there, but we don't pretend to be experts in their space. All the genuine insights and the thoughts come from them.
Yeah, that's the experience that I've had with a lot of our clients. It's difficult to tell your own story and to like pull the insights, and we often don't realize all the things that we take for granted in terms of like the
Mhm.
knowledge that we have in our industry. And so having that other person that doesn't know as much saying, "Now wait a second, you just used a term there. I'm unfamiliar with that term. Let's break it down." Or, "Wow, that actually sounds like a really interesting story." It feels very simple for you, but from someone from the outside, that's a wild tale. Let's tell that story, and kind of marrying all those things together makes for better content, which again, when you pair that with the strategy to actually move it to a sale, can be way more effective. Wholeheartedly agree with that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I think from the content marketing perspective, that's where a lot of the magic happens, right? Like we're able to really capture their voice, we're able to tell their story in a way that is one to many. So if you think about it, the content marketing is one to many, sales is kind of one to one. And so when you cover both of those grounds, you get something magical.
I love that. Okay, one to many, drive them into like an easy one to one in order to like have that really meaningful conversation that with their guard down. It's like, yes, I'm selling, but it's because I've inspired you into this other vision, that this grander thing that we're trying to accomplish. Like, come join us on this journey, essentially. Yeah.
Exactly. And in the back of everyone's heads, people are always wondering, what's in it for me, and can this person deliver the results? So that's what you're always trying to solve, sort of on a subconscious level, right? You're trying to demonstrate that you do have that expertise and authority, and that you can help the person ultimately. But you have to do that in a way that's not self-serving. You have to show them that you're genuinely interested in them and what they offer, and then from there, things get smoother and easier to actually get towards the sale.
Yeah. That's so cool. Okay, so what I'm picking up is that the depth and breadth of Magic Media, like there's just something deeper to it. And I love that aspect, which actually pulls us into my next line of questions, which is expanding the team. And
Mm,
I want to talk about that a little bit, like, why you felt like you needed to, some of the fears behind it. But I think a big part of what I can imagine, and I've read from some of the content and the pieces that you've shared about this hiring process or team expansion process, is that the vision that you had for Magic Media was a big part of attracting the right people to the team itself. And so I want to give you some space, like maybe if we could start with some nuts and bolts, like what are you doing in terms of expansion, and then why did you feel like now was the time to take that leap?
totally. So I'll take it even a little bit further back than what I initially wrote. I had started Magic Media back when I was doing my master's, but I realized I didn't really have enough time and space to really commit fully to it. So we were able to get one client ultimately like a couple years back, and we were trying to service him with a full-on team. Like I'd hired 4 people to service this one guy with the hopes of bringing on more clients down the road, and it just crashed and burned. Like it failed miserably. And the reason being is that A, none of us were fully committed because we were all kind of like doing our own thing. But B, we were just splitting one paycheck across five people, right? So it really was kind of negligible. He also wasn't paying that much because it was our first client. So we were in his good graces. He was kind of just like paying to get the ball rolling on his end. And for us, we were just paying for, I was paying it five ways between me and the other four people on the team. So quickly they realized that it's not sustainable. Everyone kind of left and went to do their own thing. But serendipitously, one of those people then introduced me to their new boss, and they became our biggest client yet. And so there were definitely some learning lessons and takeaways from that. The first being that you shouldn't hire too early. There is such a thing. And so hiring too early means splitting money that you don't have with people. Um, and yeah, that's not a recipe for success. However, nowadays we have a slightly different approach. We already have more clients under our belt, so that kind of takes care of that. But more importantly, there's more, to what you mentioned earlier, there's intentionality behind the hiring decision. So it's not just kind of like getting on board anyone who's talented and capable just because they're talented and capable, but really putting it to use. And so in this case, we have a social seller and we have a content strategist slash creator. And in that end, we're able to fulfill both aspects of the business, right? We're able the social seller expands the business for us and then offers those services for other people as well. And then the content strategist does the same thing on the marketing side. So she creates for us. Her name is Kamya, and the social seller's name is Tafin. And she creates for us on Magic Media site, and then also for our clients as well. And so there's a lot more intentionality baked into it now, and we're not necessarily splitting it five ways. I've sort of communicated transparently to them that we need to keep some of the money into the business for new hires down the road for just
Mm.
general business expansion. So touching on what you mentioned in terms of aligning incentives, this was really interesting because both of them kind of came to me in different ways, right? So the social seller, Shafin, he fully approached me, and at first I didn't necessarily tell him to buzz off, but just like I guess body language and the way I was approaching it, I was like, oh, not another lead gen guy, right? But because I'm sure like once you put founder on your title, you're gonna get hit with like 10 lead gen agencies a day
All of
trying
it.
to reach out to you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not, and through every channel too, right? Like on LinkedIn and your email, even on WhatsApp, like everywhere that they can reach you, they will. And so he really stood apart because he was super persistent, which that's one way to stand out, but there are other people who are persistent as well. So the way that he stood out is he sent me samples of his work. He showed the results for those individual people. And then he actually put together a custom strategy deck specifically for me that you can tell was fully customized. So even though he didn't know all of the information right off the bat in terms of what we were trying to achieve, he took a best stab at it, and I really appreciated that. I
Mm.
could tell that he was different in that manner because he went not just the extra mile, but like the extra marathon, right? He
Mhm.
really he really went all the way. And so I thought if he's doing this for me, he's gonna do this for everyone. So that's how he stood out for me. So I told him right off the bat, listen, man, I can't afford to pay for leads. Like I'm not at a place right now with Magic Media where I can afford that. I can't. In other words, a lead to me is an opportunity to get a customer, right? But it's not definitive. And so
Mhm.
I can't pay for opportunities to get customers. I can only pay for customers after the fact. Once they pay me, I can pay you. So he understood that. He was very transparent. I could tell that he was hungry. So that's why we struck an agreement basically that every person that you find me that we onboard that we start servicing, once they pay up, you get 20% of that. And
Mhm.
so that's where the aligning incentives started happening because he's no longer incentivized to just find prospects. He's incentivized to find actual clients, right? And
Sure.
so
Yeah.
now we're aligned on our incentives now. And so that's why, he gets paid when I get paid essentially. And that's where the transparency, the fairness comes in. So that's on his side is I pay him 20% for every client that he finds. And I find that fair because if he wasn't going to find that person, I would never get to work with them to begin with.
Mhm.
And mind you, this is only for the people that he finds as well. So if I find someone, right, then I don't necessarily pay him because that's not within his wheelhouse.
Yeah.
So that that's on that end. From the content strategist perspective, I also give her 20% for every client that she takes on, and that way I'm able to delegate the work, right? So I'm able to basically get him to source people from a social selling perspective, and then get her to fulfill that work, so I can focus on more higher level strategy for the business and business expansion in general.
Yeah. So I think that's so fascinating and interesting because you are aligning incentives. You're thinking about one of the best ways to support employees or a team is to ensure that the business continue to operate and continue to operate,
Hmm.
right? So if,
That's
if you
right.
go out of business, it doesn't matter what the compensation structure was. So it's like, how can we make sure that um, they are getting taken care of, but like the business is going to continue to operate to provide the structure so that you can fulfill on the clients and make sure that the money keeps flowing. And you'd mentioned moving to like higher level activities now that you're able to hopefully delegate some portion of fulfillment and outreach and sales. What does that look like? What is the day to day of Ido, the founder of Magic Media, or what are you hoping to achieve maybe as some of these systems get built out?
So yeah, that's a great question. So right now I'm kind of sitting in between the sales and the marketing. I'm kind of taking on managerial activities, making sure, for instance, that our messaging is geared towards our ICP, which is ideal client persona or profile. So basically, just making sure that everything we put out there is something that a prospect would actually want to be seeing that resonates with them specifically. So we've explored different avenues of people that we can pursue, right? We've thought of like salespeople who might just need more marketing efforts, or marketers who might need more sales efforts. This is our social seller and our content strategist kind of challenging me to think through who else might be a good fit for this, right?
Hmm.
Which is also, by the way, an awesome benefit of working with other people beyond just being able to delegate, is that they're not just employees, they're thought partners, right? So they come to me with a lot of insights, with a lot of potential tools that we can integrate into our tech stack, just different strategies that they've picked up on. So they've been tremendously helpful that way in advancing the business, not just with what I say to do, but with bringing in new perspectives as well. So to get back to your question on what does my day to day look like, it's more on just general business strategy, like where are we heading, who should we be talking to, and then directing them in that manner. So in that triple Venn diagram that we have, I kind of sit between sales and marketing.
Hmm.
So I manage both essentially, and I'm just really making sure that we get the right people on board. Down the road, I also didn't mention this, but we're building a SaaS platform. So I'm also looking to do things like raising investments and just like finding the right people to partner with.
Hmm.
So that's been a lot in my mind space as well.
That's okay. So that's really cool to hear. Had when you, and I don't want to like totally derail the conversation, but when you're
Sure.
thinking about building a SaaS product, first off, like what was kind of the impetus behind it? Are you like, I'm assuming you're solving like a pain point or a problem that you have, or did you kind of see an opportunity and you're like, this would be interesting? Cause I'm also thinking about like Ido, the entrepreneur, like leveling up or changing like how maturing through this whole process. And SaaS is that's a big undertaking, so how do you think about that?
Yeah, another great question, man. All of the above, basically. So it started out with really just kind of servicing existing clients and almost building out a process for doing that, right? So right now, what we do is, or part of what we do is we get on calls with founders that are our clients, and we record conversation with them. Let me backtrack. We get on calls with founders and we record conversations with them, and then we clip that content and create video marketing out of it. And so that way we're able to really capture their brand voice, and then from there we're able to actually create content around it as well. And so that whole process takes not an insignificant amount of time. It takes us some time, even with people that we could delegate the work to. And so the thought process was, what if we figure out a way to automate this entire process, right? So right now it looks like we get on a Google Hangout call or a Riverside call or a Zoom call. We record the conversation and the transcript. We pull that, we run it through a tool called Opus Clips, which allows us to clip the content.
Hmm.
We run the transcript through some AI to get some initial LinkedIn copy, which we then give a human edit to as well. then we combine the two. So we have the clipped content and the copy, and that creates a LinkedIn post. And so the thought process was, what if we can get to LinkedIn posts significantly faster? Just like chop down that timeline of creation, of ideation, creation, editing, and publishing and scheduling out. So that was the idea behind it. So what we're building is essentially a SaaS platform where imagine right now we're on a call. The second we hop off the call, you instantly have content. It's what we're calling conversation content. And so we work with content calendars that we populate for folks so that they can see exactly what piece of content is being published when. And
Hmm.
so the idea is that you would get on a call, the second you get off the call, that content calendar gets auto populated with your conversation as like a clipped part of your conversation with appropriate copy as well. And then you can reformat that into newsletter content, into blog copy, whatever it is you want to do with the content.
Hmm.
But the idea is how can we get to content faster, like ready to publish content faster that still captures the brand voice of the individual. Like something that we're hyper aware of is we're not just creating AI content. We don't want it to feel like AI. We don't want it to be just like surface level. It needs to come from the expertise and authority of the individual, which is
Hmm.
a challenge that we've had for a long time with Magic Media is how can we capture the individual voice as opposed to trying to create content that we hope they will like? Because some feedback that we've gotten a lot of the time is, I don't know that I would say this exact sentence here, or this doesn't sound like it's in my brand voice, or I just wouldn't say this at all, or maybe
Hmm.
we're not allowed to say this for whatever reason. So we took a step back and we're like, okay, let's have the other person come to us with the insights. What we can do is we can capture it, record it. That way it's never a miss, right? We're never just creating content with the hopes that they like it. It all comes from them originally. And if we source it from them originally, then all we have to do is create that level of polish that, pushes their message out there enough to actually convert.
So,
So
so that
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 was kind of a
reflects.
long-winded answer.
No, no, no. That's yeah, that's amazing. So first off, sign me up for the beta test. I'm on board.
Awesome. Nice. Love it.
Yeah. Then I'm thinking through like that's very similar to the process we take at SAF Digital, which is having those conversations because the insights do come from our thought leaders or our clients. One of the things that we've been realizing is the value of the prep work before the conversation even begins. So thinking through the questions, the conversations, the prompts essentially that we want to get from the client, we found that it has made for one, better content, two, easier to actually get to that content. And then, by the time you're done with it, you aren't just kind of like scrambling around trying to say like, what did they say that was maybe interesting that we can create a post about? So
Totally.
yeah, not necessarily with this platform, I guess, in particular, the SaaS platform, but how do you think about, going into these conversations with your clients in order to elicit the best quality responses and really get into those insights? How do you think about that?
Yeah, that's great. I think you said it right off the bat is the prep work. It's really just showing them ahead of time what kind of questions you're asking them so there's no curveballs, so they don't feel thrown off by anything you ask essentially. And then it's also, and this is something you've been doing really well on this call, is it's in the quality of the questions that you ask, right? So you're essentially leading the conversation, you're steering it in a certain direction as the interviewer. And so it all comes down to, are you asking intelligent, open-ended questions that
Mhm.
lead to new insights essentially? And can you do that ahead of time so that no one gets thrown off? Because when you ask more complex questions, higher level questions, people have to take a step back and think. And sometimes, running with it live isn't the best option for them because they want to be a little bit more methodical with how they respond. And so giving them that preparation ahead of time so that they know what they're going to say to a question that might be a little bit more complicated to answer, I think that's where the magic happens.
Okay, this is super validating because that was the direction that we're heading. And I was, in this world of AI, there's so much opportunity for automation and for AI to like step in and do some of the work for you. So I start to think like what are the components that AI could not replicate? And then can we just double down our effort and our strategy in that specific area, and then leverage technology as best we can. So what are the things in that whole process that AI can't replicate? One is the response from the thought leader, like their actual insights, stories, and ideas. And two, I think one of the
Exactly.
highest leverage things is the questions, like the ability to say, "Oh, you said something really interesting there. Let's unravel that. Let's dive in." That's something, those are two high level, very human things. And so if we can then use technology to kind of bolster that, that might be like the way to make things more efficient, but then also get to a better result.
Hmm. Exactly. It's, something that I heard that I really like and really resonated with me is that we should use AI to outsource mundane tasks, route tasks that, can be handled by a machine, but we should never use AI to outsource our thinking. So anything at the strategic level, any insights that we have, that needs to stay true to human. That needs to come from us essentially.
That's hard 'cause I tend to outsource my thinking a lot. It's so easy. And then every time I'm disappointed with the results, and I'm like, I should have just sat down. And even though it was hard, there was that friction point of like, okay, now I got to really think, dig deep. The end result is always better. So yeah,
Hmm.
I
Well, I'll
I
I'll
hear you.
take it. Yeah, and I'll click into that a little bit more. Um, when it comes to AI, I think the way that AI is changing the nature of work right now and the nature of even something like strategizing for work is that so AI is essentially changing the conversation to not just being creative but curative. So when you have all of these different potential outputs, like you're not just limited by can I write one blog post per week? Suddenly you can write hundreds, right?
Mhm.
The quality doesn't just come in the creative itself, but in how you pick and choose and curate those insights. And so AI can provide different insights for you in a sense, like it can help you with ideation, but it can't necessarily pick for you which is the best one for your audience. And so if you can amass a library of insights and help it with your ideation process, but you still remain as the decider and the picker and chooser of which insights you're running with, then that a lot of times is what makes for more effective use of AI, right? Is how can you curate the different outputs that AI provides in order to reach something at an even higher level than what you could if you didn't. And so AI is fundamentally changing the landscapes of just being creative to curative as well.
Oh, that's beautiful. Well said. Snaps for that, brother.
Thank you. Thank you.
Very cool. Hey, so speaking of AI, this actually again transitions us very nicely. I do want to leave the audience with a little bit of, just straight like LinkedIn growth strategy, like how do you interact with the platform? And sometimes it can feel like you're just lost in a sea of stuff, like you're stuck in your little network and you can't quite break out. So speaking of AI and curating, one of the banes of, I guess, of a lot of creators' existence at this point is commenting, specifically AI comments. But then I also know that you strategically utilize comments for growth and kind of just breaking out of that awareness bubble in LinkedIn. So, kind of a two-part question there. One is, how do you think about content comments on LinkedIn in particular to grow? And then two, this idea of AI comments that are kind of just like spamming everything, and we're not taking the chance to curate, a quality response. So,
Yeah, totally. And great question again. So as far as commenting goes, I really think of commenting and just like having a commenting strategy, which is something you don't hear often, is like actually strategizing around your comments, right? So having a commenting strategy in place, I think is really important in terms of like when do I even comment? Like whose post should I comment on? Are there specific people that I should return to in order to comment for more visibility or to expand the dialogue? But really, what it comes down to is just thinking of comments as pieces of content themselves, right? And so it achieves the same thing, right? It helps you grow your brand awareness. It helps people learn that you exist to begin with, and it starts dialogues with new people who can become prospects, can become partners, investors, the whole shebang, right? So comments in and of themselves are a form of content, and when you approach it like that, you start to take it a lot more seriously. You start to think of comments as an extension of whatever the original post was, and not just something like a regurgitation of what the person said. So that's something I always advocate for is do not regurgitate what was said. Think of how you can add to the conversation, right? That's something you start to see a lot on LinkedIn is people kind of rephrasing what was already said. And it doesn't help you stand out. Doesn't help you stand out when you do that. And so in order to stand out, you want to think about how can I continue the conversation? You want to get in the headspace of whoever is reading it. So what would be valuable for someone to hear? Same way you think through content. Like who am I creating for? Who am I commenting for? And if you think about it that way, then you start to take it a lot more seriously. And more than that, I also encourage people to go back into their comments, which you can do on LinkedIn. You can go on your profile, click on your comments, and you can see every comment that you've ever commented. Just scroll through it, through the running list, and just return to those comments and expand on them, turn those into your own posts as well. You'll find that there's a lot of ideas that are baked into your comments that you haven't captured in your own content. So it's a great way to continue on with just content creation in general and with ideation. And then you mentioned AI as well. I definitely recommend that people do not use AI for commenting because it gets to the point where people can tell and it looks disingenuous, right? People are like, "Oh, this isn't Ido commenting. It's an AI that he hired or that he assigned to it." So definitely don't use AI for commenting and treat comments like their own standalone content as well, and return back to them so you can create more content out of it.
That is like a comment masterclass right there. The fact that even like the whole going back and looking at previous comments, I had no idea that you could do that. So I'm gonna have to figure that out. That's gonna be a future post that I'm gonna put out. It's like here's how to do this.
Check it out. You
Yeah.
probably have so many you definitely have so many golden insights that you've left on other people's posts that will
Hmm.
make for amazing standalone posts as well. And it really helps with ideation. I mean, if you're ever at a loss of like, what am I going to create for next week or for next month? Yeah, your
Hmm.
comments are sitting there waiting. So check them
Yeah.
out.
That's cool. Well, and one of the things that you had mentioned, as we were kind of talking back and forth before this podcast started, was like the reciprocity nature of commenting. There is kind of a strategy to it as well. I'd heard Justin Welsh talk about he actually, when he was growing his Twitter following, he went and found kind of like the top people on Twitter, and then kind of the mid tier, and then next year in terms of like followers, aware audience size, and then he would just strategically always be commenting just a little bit, or really connecting and building relationships with people just a little bit ahead of him, in order to kind of use that process to level up. And obviously, each comment was adding value. It was bringing awareness to the original poster, as well as his, so you had mentioned just reciprocity. I wanted to kind of double click on that. How do you think about actually building those relationships? And maybe you'd already touched a little bit on the strategy, but the strategy behind who do you comment on, why, and then how do you build those relationships?
Totally. So in terms of figuring out who to comment on, I like to kind of segment it in threes almost. So people with huge followings who are probably not likely to respond, but I'm able to get more visibility on everyone else who follows them as well. So, think about like the Gary Vaynerchuk's of the world, or like Alex Hormozy, those kinds of people where they probably won't respond to me, but everyone who follows them will see the comment to some degree if it's not drowned out by like those under 400 comments. But anyone who's a second degree connection or first degree connection will surely see it because the comments get bumped up to the top of anyone that you know that follows
Mm-hmm.
them. So those, it can be used as a nurturing sort of vehicle as well for your first and second degree connections, and also as a introductory sort of as an introduction to third degree connections. So people will see it, they're like, "Oh, that was smart. I'm gonna click into his profile and see what else he has to say." And then, same thing as with sales. They go on your profile, they see your content, they give you a follow, they continue to see your content. Um, so that's the first group is the large following. Second is the mid following, mid-sized following. So we're talking about like 1 to 20K probably, and followers. And those people are people who might be more likely to respond. They have a more niche audience per se, so the reason why people follow them is different than those bigger accounts. A lot of those bigger accounts tend to do a combination of like strategy, tactics, and then inspiration.
Mm-hmm.
At the smaller size, it might be more at the tactical level. So the context of what you're commenting might change. So I look for people who would either make for good prospects, or who themselves have an audience of people who would make for good prospects at the mid-size level. Then at the small size level, it's kind of similar to the start of the conversation where we're talking about sales being a one-to-one and marketing being a one-to-many. Similar thing with the commenting, right? So if you comment on people with smaller profiles, it's a bit more targeted that way. So that's the one-to-one approach. Like you're commenting for the original poster to see it and to
Mm,
respond back to
hmm.
you. With the mid-size, you're commenting for a bit of both, the original poster and their audience. And then with the large size, you're commenting purely for their audience because you're not expecting that person to comment back. So by kind of hitting all three of those buckets, you're able to establish rapport with a ton of people, get your brand out there. We're talking brand awareness right now, and just kind of get the ball rolling on more people entering that sales funnel and marketing funnel that you've created for yourself.
So normally I try and like stay like super present and like just like listening because I know I can always come back and listen. I'm like literally taking notes right now. Like this is so good. I'm like, what?
I
I
appreciate
need to
that,
do
man.
this.
I
This is awesome.
appreciate that so much. And yeah, I would also add just have a running list of those people in the different buckets, right? Like 10
Mhm.
and 20 people in the large bucket, 10 and 20 people in the mid-size bucket, 10 and 20 people in the smaller size bucket, and really just make it a point to return to them. So on when someone comments, you can click on it's either the three dots or they might have a like the bell icon themselves. If it's someone you identify as someone that you want to continue commenting on, on a day-to-day basis, then you can hit that bell button whether it's tucked away in those three dots or not, to basically get a push notification every time that they post. And so
Mm.
that way you know right off the top that they're posting, and you can even write it, if it's part of your strategy to be among the first posters, the first commenters, I mean, then you just get more visibility that way, right? Because if
Mhm.
it's in the large bucket, the person with like 100K followers, and you're one of the first people to post, then you can bet your bottom dollar that more people are seeing your comment before it gets drowned out by those other 400 comments. So being the first to comment on a large bucket, like a large amount of following, uh, being the first to comment on someone with a lot of followers on one of their posts gets you a lot more visibility because more people see it.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Okay. I love it. Have you ever tried tools like Aware? Have you tried that platform? They basically kind of like Taplio or, those kind of things, but you can do commenting really easily. And their goal is just to make it super straightforward. You can have your own like custom list, basically a curated feed. Have you ever tried a tool like that or do you use vanilla LinkedIn?
Yeah, I've at the moment, as far as commenting goes, I'm kind of vanilla LinkedIn. Like I definitely have used social listening tools and just kind of seeing, where people are posting, what they're posting, and who I should follow, kind of thing. But I've heard mixed reviews in terms of whether LinkedIn penalizes you for that or not. So
Mm.
because of that, I've just kind of stayed in platform for the time being.
Yeah. Which means you must have the willpower of like a god to be able to not get sucked into like the feed. I just end up scrolling and just reading and
It's too easy.
yep,
It's
it's
too
rough.
easy to do that. Yeah, it is rough. I can't say that that doesn't happen to me. I definitely get sucked in, but and that's the other thing, right? Is that I'm really a huge fan of LinkedIn because I find that the caliber of the content, just the general quality of it, is much higher than say Instagram or any of the other socials, really, just because of the context of the platform, right? So that's not to say that you shouldn't be present on other platforms either. But it all comes down to who's your target audience, like who are you trying to reach, and where are they? And just as a generality, when we're talking about social media marketing, one of my favorite quotes actually comes from Gary Vaynerchuk, which he says that social media is a slang word for the center of the internet. So when you think about it like that, you start to take it a lot more seriously.
Mm.
So a lot of people are like, I'm shying away from social, or I don't like what social is or what it's become. And, fair game, fair play. I think that a lot of the times we forget to put the social in social media, right? We're just kind of trying to build up an audience or get a bunch of followers, but we don't really have strong relationships with them. And so I would much rather be someone who has 100 loyal followers than someone who has 10,000 just like audience members. You want people who love you, not kind of like you. And so I would rather have a smaller, denser collection of people who love me than a huge, sizable following that I can't actually do anything with, right? Like if they don't trust me, if we don't have that level of rapport that's built up over time through just relationship building, then I can't actually get them to do anything that I want them to do. So it doesn't actually benefit either of us. They're just kind of following me to follow. So
Hmm.
that's why I'd much rather go for what I call quality at scale, if that makes sense. So you don't want to compromise on either.
Hmm.
But inevitably, that does mean that you're not scaling as fast. But but in scaling, you're actually getting the right people to see what you're putting out there.
That's beautiful. Beautifully said. So as we're kind of closing out this conversation, and this has been just inspiring, really cool. I'm gonna like literally have to read through, as I'm going through the edit process
Thank
of
you so
this, I'm just
much.
gonna be taking notes again on some actionable stuff to make LinkedIn better, easier, more fun. And honestly, from a business owner perspective, I'm also like, okay, here we go. I can snag some of these insights. But I wanted to give you a chance to talk maybe a little bit more about like the future of Magic Media. Like, what are you excited to build with this company, with this organization? And maybe if we add on a layer, I didn't really prep you for this, but like, what's the future of Ido? Like, where are you going? Where are you? What are you excited to accomplish in this world?
Oh, I love that. I think a lot about that question. You know, I really believe in two sort of Latin phrases. One is memento mori, which is just remember death. It's basically just a call to action while you're living to build your legacy, basically, and to be remembered for the amazing things that you do. So I think about that every single day. It's just like, how can I build a legacy that helps people down the road, even when I'm gone? And then the other one, so that's memento mori. The other one is carpe diem, right? Which is just, it's along the same lines. It's just seize the day, right? So basically, I believe in just having presence and intentionality in everything you do. And so as far as Magic Media goes, that means helping other people change the world. So it's not just about changing the world yourself, but it's about collectively building a better world together. So for me, what excites me about Magic is being able to connect with all sorts of change makers and thought leaders in different spaces and helping them carve out their niche and basically change the world with whatever their vertical is or their industry. So I mentioned, for instance, that we work with a guy in supply chain, like sustainability supply chains. So that's an awesome way to change the world, right? Is to just help more people, uh, whether it's something like source better coffee, more ethically sourced coffee, where there aren't farm workers dying out there to get your coffee, or maybe that means like making sure that people don't die of malaria in regions where that's prevalent. So that's on one end with like sustainability and supply chains. Then we work with people who are in change management and they help large enterprise companies with mergers and acquisitions, with change transformations and just making sure that change sticks as a generality. So as you can see, there's like so many different avenues to explore when you work with other really smart, dedicated, driven people. And so my mission is to just help their mission become a success, right? Is to help change the world as a collective. And so that's where Magic Media kind of sits. It's a sales and marketing agency for visionary brands and founders. So the 5 year timeline is really just building out that SaaS platform so that we can help people kind of automate their marketing and sales efforts so that they can focus more on their big mission. And we can help them with just creating that content that sparks interest and basically starts relationships as well.
Dude, I love it. That's so good. It's so cool. Man, thank you for letting me be a part of this journey with you and to give you an opportunity to share this because the world needs to hear there's just like something about like that idea of great ideas need to be heard. We just have to get them out there. And so helping these amazing people doing amazing things to make the world a better place. And like that is like your the value like that's your zone of genius, the opportunity to kind of share with the world and shape it the way that we hopefully can, so
Thank you so much, Adam. Really. And I'll say one more thing, um, my wife is Mexican, so she has this saying that she got from her mom in Spanish, which I don't know where she got it from, but It's really beautiful. It basically translates to every mind is a world. And so if you think about it that way, right, everyone has a rich inner world. And there's 8 billion of us, right? There's 8 billion of us on this planet right now. So imagine how many inner worlds there are. So what if we can tap those inner worlds to change the world that we all share? That's the magic, that's the beauty, that's the vision.
That's the mission, brother. So cool. All
That's
right.
right.
Ido, thank you so much for sitting
Adam,
down with me today. I really appreciate it.
hey, you are the man. I really appreciate it all the same. And I'm really excited to see how this comes out.
Cool. All right. Well, take care, brother. Bye.
Thank you so much, Adam. Have a good one.
Hey everybody, Adam here. Thank you so much for listening to this conversation I had with Ido. It was an absolute blast. If you want to learn more about what's going on with Magic Media and the rest of his team, I highly encourage you to check him out on LinkedIn. He's always dropping knowledge and is more than willing to share his wisdom. If you could do me one favor, like and subscribe this episode on YouTube, leave a podcast review. It really does help spread the word about what we're trying to do on the Couplepreneur podcast, which is, again, Maggie and I trying to build a business that supports our lifestyle and then doing what we can to educate and share wisdom along the way. So that would mean the world to us. And honestly, just you listening to this episode means the world to us as well. So thank you so much for sticking with us. And until next time, cheers.